Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to continue with chapter number 9, Express JS from the subject Web Frameworks. In last sessions, we have seen the REST API, then introduction to Express JS, then HTTP methods from Express, then the REST API basics and the API for that, methods for that REST API. Then we have seen the introductory part regarding Express JS. Then we have seen that why should we use that Express.js, then the necessity of Express.js, then the features of Express.js, that is, it is faster server-side development, middleware, then routing, templating, debugging, then the advantages of Express here. Then we have seen the installation process for that Express.js, the commands for that installation. Then we have seen this example for that Express.js, then request and response object with the methods. Then we have seen that response methods. Then we have seen that express JS get request. That is, we have seen that get and post methods for that REST API with the examples. We have seen that express JS post as well as get method. Now, and that we have seen express JS routing with the examples. Now, in these sessions, we are going to discuss about error handling. So here, error handling refers to how Express catches and processes errors that occur both synchronously and asynchronously. We have seen that synchronous function and asynchronous function. Yeah, that asynchronous function is prefixed by the asynchronous keyword. So that error handling in the Express, that how that errors are handled in the synchronous and asynchronous functions, how that errors are processes. That here Express comes with a default error handler. So you don't need to write your own code to get started or to handle that error here. So Express comes with default error handler. So how to catch that error? So catching that errors means, so here it is important to ensure that Express catches all the errors that occur while running root handlers and middleware. So while that running of that root handlers and the middlewares, Express catches all the errors that occurs in the running that root handlers or the middleware. So here errors that occur in synchronous code inside root handlers and the middleware that require no extra work. If synchronous code throws an error, then Express will catch and process it. How it will catch and process it here? See the example. So app.get, getting that function here, getting that request here, app.get inside the bracket in single quote slash comma, the function contains the parameter request and response. That body contain here. See how that, how Express will catch the error and process it here. Throw new, see, throw new error inside the bracket broken here. So Express catch this, catch Express will catch this error and handles on its own. This is for synchronous function here. Okay. So in synchronous function, that if that code synchronous code throws an error, so that Express will catch and process this error here using throw new error and the message here. Then here for errors returned from the synchronous function invoked by root handlers and the middleware, so we must pass them to the next function. When your errors return from the asynchronous function, we have seen for the synchronous function, and now here errors return from asynchronous functions that invoked by the root handlers and the middleware, so we must pass them to the next function. So where Express will catch and process them. That we have to pass that errors to the next function where that Express will catch and process that error. See the example for that, app.get inside the bracket slash comma function contains three parameters now: request, response, and the next. So the body of that get function here. So here we are going to write one file like fs.read file. So this is the message that file does not exist. That means error here. So function contains error comma data. This is the callback function here. Read file is the callback here. We are going to read that file. If that file is not present, so here if error, so we are going to pass that errors to Express here. Like next inside the bracket value, that is error. If that error, we are going to pass that error to the express here, then it will handle that error. Else response dot send the data. If there is no error, it will proceed further. Okay, this is the way we can pass that errors to the next function in the that errors are written from the asynchronous functions. Then we are going to pass that error, pass them to the next function here. Yeah, next error, we are going to pass that error to the express. Then, yeah, starting with that express 5 root handlers and middlewares that return a promise, that return a promise. We have seen that about promises. That means it will call the next and the value automatically when they reject or throw an error. Whenever root handlers and we are starting with that express, then that root handlers and the middleware return a promise. What promise? That it will return, that is call that next value automatically when they are going to throw the error or they are going to reject that. Okay, see the example for that here. Get function with the user slash id. See the asynchronous function, proceeding with the asynchronous keyword here. Asynchronous function consisting of parameters request, response and next. So yeah, where user is equals to await, we have to wait for this. Await get user by id that contains request dot params dot id and response dot send user here. Here you can see that if that get user by id throws an error to or error, or if it is throw any error or an any rejection, so next will be called. Here next will be called with the value provided within that next function. So there when that next will be called with the default error object, that means if no rejected value is there in that next function, then that next will be called with the default error object provided by the express router here. So here you can see that if that get user by id function, if it throws an error or rejects, then the next function will be called with the value inside that next function here, or either it throw the error or the rejected value. If there is no rejected value inside that next is provided, then next will be called with the default error object that is provided by the express router. If you pass anything to the next function, like except the string root, then that express regards the current request as being an error and it will skip any remaining non-error handling routing and the middleware function. So we have to pass the value to the next function. So here, if the callback in a sequence provided no data, then only if there is only errors. If that callback, here you can see if the callback in a sequence provides no data, that means there is only errors are there. So we can simplify this code like here, get function with the parameter like request, response and next. Then here, write file. So fs.write file is the callback here with the message and the data here. Inaccessible path, data comma next. This is the callback here, and the close the function, then function request comma response, response dot send okay, and close that function here. Here you can see in this example, next is provided as the callback for here. Next is provided as the callback for fs dot write file, which is called without or with the errors. If there is no error, then the second handler is executed. If there is no error, then the second handler is executed. That is, it will send the response as a okay. Otherwise, express catches and processes the error. If is there any error, then express will catch that error and process for that error. So yeah, we must catch the errors that occurs in asynchronous code that are invoked by the uh, root handlers or the middlewares, and we have to pass them to the express for the processing. So how to pass this? See the get function app.get, then slash comma function request comma response comma next. Three parameters are there for the next is for the error handling here. Then you see the set timeout function. That set timeout function contains the empty function with the body. Here see try and catch block. We are going to use try and catch block. So try block consists of throw new error. Throw new error inside the bracket message here broken. Then close the try block here, then catch error. And inside the catch block here, next error. That means pass this error to the express here. Close the catch block, then close the function and comma 100, set the timeout here and close the get function here. So in this example we are going to use, or we are using that try catch block to catch the errors in the asynchronous code and pass them to the express yes. If the try catch block were omitted here you can see, if this try and catch block is omitted, then that express would not catch the errors since it is not the part of that synchronous handler code. If we are going to omit the try and catch block, then it will not pass the, or it will not catch the error since it is not the part of that synchronous handler here. Okay. So how to use the try and catch block with the error message here, you can see try block with the throw new error try message here and then catch the error and pass that error by using next function here, next and the value. So use promises to avoid overhead of the try. Here you can see the try and catch block. If there is overhead of the try block, then we have to use the promises to overhead or to avoid the overhead of that try catch block, or when using functions that return promises. That time we use promises here. How to use that promises for the try overhead of the try and catch block? See the example here, app.get, and that function contains the three parameters here, request, response and the next. Then here use the promise here, promise dot resolve dot then, this is the promise here, promise dot resolve, we have to resolve that error here, promise dot resolve function dot then, and the function empty function here unnamed function without any parameters, then open that, write the body for that function like throw new error for the synchronous function here throw new error and that message, and close that function and catch the error, catch inside the bracket next. That means that here error will be passed to the express and close the function, close the get function here since that promises automatically catch both synchronous errors and the rejected promises automatically catch the synchronous error and rejected promises. So you can simply provide next as the final catch handler here. You can simply provide the next as the final catch handler here, and express will catch that errors because that catch handler is given the errors as the first arguments. Catch handler contains the error as the first arguments here. Okay. So this is the way we can use promises to avoid that overhead of try and catch block, or when we are using that functions that returns the promises. So use promises to avoid that overhead of try and catch block. Then here we could also use a chain of handlers to rely on synchronous error catching by reducing the asynchronous code to something travel here. See the example, app.get inside the bracket slash comma function with the parameters request response and next, and here you can see that read file function fs.read file, that may be valid file comma encoding function utf-8 and function consisting of error and data. This is the callback for the read file here. Response.locals.data is equals to data. If it is success, then proceed that with this response send response.locals.data. If it is there any error, proceed pass that error by using next function here, next error, and write the function request comma response. That means we are going to, if there is no error, we are going to process that data here. So here in this example, there are a couple of travel statements from the read file call. There are many travel statements are there. So if read file causes an error, if that read file causes any error, then it passes that error to the express. So otherwise it will quickly return to the word of synchronous error handling in the next handler in the chain. Here you can see. Then the example here, this example tries to process the data. If this fails in the synchronous error handler, if it is fails in the synchronous error handler, so it will catch it. So if you had done this processing inside the read file callback, then the application might exit and the express error handlers will not return. Then that whichever method we are going to use here, if you want to use express error handlers to be called in and the application to survive, we must ensure that the express receives the error here. So we can also use chain of handlers here in the that are handlers to rely on the synchronous error catching here. Then the default error handler. So Express comes with the built-in error handler that takes care of any errors that might be encountered in the app. So where Express comes with the default error handler for the handling or taking care of the errors that are encountered in the app. Yeah. So this default error handling middleware function is added at the end of the middleware function stack. So this default error handling middleware function is added in at the end of middleware function. So if you pass an error to the next function and you do not handle it in the custom error handler, so it will be handled by the built-in error handler. So it is not if it is not possible to handle that error, or we are going to pass that error to the next handler, then if that error is not handled in the custom error handler, then it will be handled by the built-in error handler. So that error will be returned to the client with the stack trace. So that stack trace is not included in the production environment here. So when an error is written, then some information is added to the response, like the response dot status code is set from the error dot status. If this value is outside the 4XX or 5XX range, it will be set to the 500. So the response dot status message is set according to the status code, and the body will be the HTML of the status code message when in production environment. Otherwise it will be like error.stack. So any headers specified in that error headers are object. So if it is not possible to handle that error by the next function, then the built-in error will handle that, or that built-in error handler will handle that error here. So if you call the next with an error after you have started writing the response, like if you encounter an error while streaming the response to the client, at that time if you encounter an error, then the express default error handler closes the connection and fails the request. So when you add a custom error handler, you must delegate to the default express handler. So when that headers have already been sent to the client, here see the function error handler with the parameters error, request, response, and the next. So here you can see if response.header sent, then if that header is sent, then return the error or pass that error to the express here. Return next inside the bracket that error. And the status is response.status 500. The status is for here we have seen that. It will set that error status here. If that value is outside the 4XX or 5XX range, it will be set to 500. Okay, here response.status 500. And here see the response dot render that response here, render error comma then the error. So here you can see the default error handler can trigger if you call that next with an error in this code more than once. If you if even if that custom sorry, even if custom error handling middleware is in that place, here the default error handler is get triggered when that next with an error in your code will be called more than once here, this return next error. Then writing error handlers. So define error handling middleware function in the same way like that other middleware functions. Except error handling functions, they have four arguments instead of three, like error, request, response, and next. We have seen that app.use function and the parameters are error, request, response, and the next. So, like console.error, print that error stack trace, error dot stack, and the status is like response.status 500 dot send something broken. This is the writing the error handler. This is the error handling in the middleware function. Then define error handling middleware at last after other app.use function and root calls. How to define that error handling in the middleware at last year after the app.use function and the root calls. You see the example where body parser. It require the body parser module, then where method override, then require method override. Here import that modules here, body parser, then method override. Then here see app.use. What to use here? Body parser dot URL encoded and it contains the extended colon true. Then app.use body parser dot JSON. Then app.use method override. App.use function. Now here see the function error comma request comma response comma next. These are the parameters are passing to the use function here, defining that error handling at the last here. We are going to define that error handler at the last. So responses from within a middleware function can be in any format. Sorry, responses can be in any format such as HTML error page or a simple message or a JSON string. So that's it for today's session. In this session, we have seen the error handling in the Express.js. We have seen the default error handler, and for the synchronous that errors are occur with that asynchronous code or the synchronous code here. We have seen that calling that or defining that error handler at the last or at the top of that code. How to trigger that or uses of try catch block in this error handling. So we will stop here. Thank you.